Hi guys, welcome to the 19th session of 30 Days to a More Powerful Vocabulary by Norman Lewis and Wilfred Funk. So today we are going to cover words about words. This course is being presented to you by me, Shilpa Jha. Please read, review, subscribe and recommend the course. Also, please leave your valuable suggestions and comments below. So let's start. The first word is anticlimax. So anticlimax is when there is a climax which has a very dull ending and something that was really very expected. Like in a horror movie, tension begins when a young girl approaches a closed door, right? And when she opens it, a cat comes out. So these are things that we've already seen, right? So it's not something that is new. It has a very dull ending, and it's basically in the form with decreased order of importance. The facts are in decreased order of importance. Like a firefighter enters a burning house because he wears what sounds like a child crying. What sounds like a child crying, when he'll reach out, he'll find it's a cat who's mewing loudly, and then when he emerges from the house, the entire family is safe and sound. So that's an anticlimax, right? So I hope you get the point. Next is analogy. So analogy is deriving a common thing between two things. Like people say there is an analogy that exists between human body and machine. So machine has its own part and every part has its own function. Similarly, our human body is also designed like that everything has its own specific function. So there's an analogy, a similarness, a likeliness between these two things. So that's an analogy. Next is ambiguity. Ambiguity means statements that can have multiple meanings. So that's giving a very vague idea. Like usually politicians, their statements are full of ambiguity. They are equivocal. They do not want to say something directly and point out something directly because they feel that they might end up into trouble. So those statements are full of ambiguity. There are always multiple meanings to one sentence, so you cannot find out what exactly does the person want to say. Next is cliche. So cliche is an overused phrase or idea, right? Like terming someone, if someone has passed and you call it an irreparable loss, so that's become a cliche. That's an overused expression. Everyone says that, right? So that's a cliche. There are a lot of other examples also, like putting vulgar content in the name of comedy has become very cliche these days, right? People put vulgar words or maybe invectives. So that's wrong. Next is an epigram. Epigram is a short, witty saying, right? For example, it's more blessed to give than to receive, forms an epigram of nobleness of charities, right? When you want to talk about charity, the famous proverb that goes like, it is more blessed to give than to receive, is an epigram. It forms an epigram, and in fact, if you see, most proverbs as such will fall under the category of epigrams. Okay, next is euphemism. So euphemism is a mild expression substituted for a blunt one, right? Improper and a blunt one. For example, like instead of saying he died, people try saying he passed away. So that then you're trying to just say that he passed away. You're trying to placate. You're trying to make the situation lesser blunt, right? For example, instead of using prostitute, if you say lady of the night, so lady of the night is a euphemism for prostitute. Next is redundancy. Redundancy is unnecessary repetition. For example, you have 2 to 3 sources of water for one particular room. So the other 2 sources, they might be redundant because they are doing the same thing. Or there is a lot of redundancy in any office in terms of work, because people, same kind of people are given the same kind of work. So that means 2-3 people are doing only one work. So there is redundancy of redundancy of work, right? So that's what redundancy is. Next is non sequitur. Non sequitur means a conclusion that does not come from the evidence given. Like the sun rises in the east, hence the earth rotates. That's wrong, right? Because you cannot predict that the sun rotates, the earth rotates because the sun rises in the east, right? So that's a non sequitur. So the conclusion does not follow the evidence. That's what is non sequitur. Persiflage. So persiflage is a light remark style of conversation or writing. So it's good humored. Basically, you're just trying to lighten the mood. You're being flippant. You're you're trying to make people happy, you're good humored, you're witty. So that is what is persiflage. So persiflage is basically a light style of conversation or writing, good humored. Next is simile. Simile is a form of speech which compares one thing to another. Like his fleece was as white as snow. So as white as snow is a simile, because you are trying to compare the color of the fleece with snow, right? So that's a simile. That's it for today, guys. I hope you liked the session. Thanks a lot.